Well, far be it from me to argue with what you like, since we're trying to get a walk in every day. Today's topic, I'm sorry, broadcasting live from Site B, located in the mythical town of Fresno, Nevada, which looks surprisingly a lot like a park. It's your boy, the OG GM, on a lazy Saturday afternoon. It is a perfect spring morning, and we're talking about spaceships and aliens, zap guns and zombies, one of my favorite topics. Weird fantasy, or more appropriately, does spaceships belong in D&D? Do aliens belong in D&D? Do advanced technology belong in D&D? And of course, weirdly enough, this somehow spirals to our favorite argument regarding technology, the combat wheelchair. Because the people who are going to use this argument, and when you go, yeah, sure, aliens belong in D&D. There already are aliens in D&D. Sure, spaceships and zap guns belong in D&D. There's been spaceships and zap guns in D&D since day one. They're going to go, oh, so you're okay with aliens and spaceships and zap guns, but you're not okay with my character having a wheelchair. Don't you think that's hypocritical? Veruca, you see, there's a difference between you specifically getting something that nobody else has that gives them an advantage over everybody else. Because if we're just asking, does spaceships, aliens, tech belong in D&D? Of course it does. It's as ingrained in the DNA of the hobby as elves. The very first published D&D adventures, Palace of the Vampire Queen and Temple of the Frog, had sci-fi in it. Greyhawk has sci-fi in it. There's robots, there's computers, there's stuff left over from old Earth, because Greyhawk was always Earth. I mean, the planet is literally called URTH. So the Forgotten Realms was a forgotten part of the realms of the world, which is why there were so many things in the Forgotten Realms that seemed familiar to our planet, like Mulheron being Egypt. Spaceships and zap guns and aliens have been a part of the hobby since day one. It's ingrained in the DNA, okay? Are there aliens in D&D today? Well, I mean, just look at the Monster Manual. 90% of those things are aliens. If we're saying Fantasy Earth, Tolkien Earth, which is the backbone for D20 Fantasy, has elves, dwarves, gnomes, whatever. Okay, we don't really need to know where they came from. They're all basically humanoid. We can just science fiction, science wave. Hello, said hi, hello. That they're just all different variations of human evolution, if you believe in evolution, and if you believe that, a cosmic force created life, then, elves, dwarves, hobbits, whatever, are just examples of the cosmic force experimenting, just like duck-billed platypuses. But then you have Shoggoths and Mind Flayers and Aboliths and Intelligent Slime and Blink Dogs and Displacer Beasts and whatever the fuck the Tarrasque is, and I can't even think, I'm trying to, my brain's going through the Monster Manual, and I'm like, oh, the Flump, yeah, that's an alien. Flail Snail, that's an alien. Mind Flayers, those are aliens. Githyanki, definitely aliens. Elementals, technically aliens. Well, they're not from another planet. Well, they're from another plane. They're from another universe. Elementals are definitely visiting the world from someplace else. So by the definition, they're aliens. Djinn are aliens. So, yes, the hobby is filled with creatures from another world. That other world could be another planet, it could be another dimension, it could be another timeline, but we've got Mind Flayers and Tieflings and Githyanki and Intelligent Slime walking hand in hand with Bill the Gnome and Sophia the Elf, and we're okay with that. So yes, aliens are in D&D. They of course have their place in D&D. We don't even have to say, well, there's life on other planets. We can say at some point in time, something happened. Where did those frickin' elementals come from? Howdy. And there's powers in that same genre that allow you to travel to the other universe, planar travel, to talk to the other universe, arguey and divination, to summon things from the other universe. So yeah, of course there's aliens. That one's yeah, okay. No need to talk about that anymore. Does science fiction belong in D&D? Well, it's ingrained, again, like I said at the beginning, it's ingrained in the backbone, okay? The very earliest adventures, the very earliest stories of D&D were as much Tolkien as they were Tarzan, as they were John Carter. They were pulps. Of course, there were lasers and robots. Greyhawk, and Blackmore, both filled with nods to technology. Be it, this is, even before Star Wars and before Wizards. But we had Jack Vance, we had John Carter, we had Tarzan, we had Buck Rogers, all the things on Appendix N. So House of the Vampire Queen had science fiction stuff. Temple of the Frog had science fiction stuff. Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, one of the the three most iconic adventures in D&D. Crash Spaceship, and it's not the only one. You could say that Iron Golems, is an Iron Golem not just a robot? Is a homunculus not just a robot? What about Warforged? They're science fiction. What's the difference between a wand of lightning and a zap gun? They both allow somebody who is not a wizard to project lightning or energy or whatever, or a bullet. They both have charges. They're both relatively easy to use. The whole point of guns is that any idiot can use them with very little training. People said hi. Hi, people. Hopefully you're liking, sharing, subscribing, and helping me support the channel with your lovely donations and purchasing my product. Bird. Dog park. So yes, science fiction exists. And science fiction would exist today. Or you don't have to call it science fiction. You could alternative evolutions of technology brought about because there is such a wide variety on the fantasy plane of races and magic and ideas and this ingrained energy of these worlds that allows these impossible things to happen. So even if you don't want to have crashed spaceships, even if you don't want to have Spelljammer, you could easily justify androids and stuff like that from either a lost civilization, if you want to go the whole, Wizards post-apocalypse Greyhawk route, or just alternative technology that developed. Well, when the Drow were first introduced, they had cybernetics. They didn't call them cybernetics, but they had cybernetics. We had golem tech and artifactors. So, yeah. Birthday party. Barbecue. Probably can't show those kids. So really, boys and girls, the do aliens do science fiction argument or hypothetical thought experiments is a roundabout way for the combat wheelchair crowd to get back into the argument. Now, much like Magic the Gathering expansions, the controversy crowd has a rotation of about every 3 months. They rotate back in a new expansion or a new take on the same argument. Does science fiction, spaceshipy stuff belong at your D&D table? Is just them rotating to combat wheelchairs. How can you be okay with aliens and crashed spaceships but you're not okay with my character having a combat wheelchair, having a artifact that allows me to do things that nobody else in the party can do, that makes me special. Because if you're, truly saying that these other things exist and magic exists, then you have to justify that somebody would have allowed me to invent this for my character and have this. And if you don't let me have this, well, you're awful. And you're a hypocrite. Because you just said you're okay with aliens. How can you be okay with aliens if you're not okay with my combat wheelchair, with my wheelchair that lets me, my 200 gold piece artifact? Well, the problem is, going back to the very beginning, the two arguments were, first off, I am not denying that in the Middle Ages, there were things available to make the life of people who were less, disabled better. But usually those people were rich. We had, rich emperors carried about on palanquins and wagons and portable little settees and whatever you call them. But those people were rich. Bill the farmer, Sophia the first level wizard's apprentice, did not have the wherewithal to acquire slaves carrying them around on their back. Or what you had, if you were lucky, you maybe got a hook or the equivalent of a hook, or a stump, or a peg leg, or a piece of wood that somebody else dragged around. Or if you were really, really lucky, you were able to put wheels on a piece of wood and drag it around. You certainly weren't going into dungeons and down stairways. So we never said that the technology didn't exist. Our problem was, first, a wheelchair, and second, that you wanted the wheelchair to have special abilities, that a first level character could spend 200 gold pieces for basically an artifact. And if that character has, not only do you basically are using somebody's disability to weaponize the hobby, but I don't know any disabled person who wanted to play themselves disabled in the game. In fact, most of them took offense with the combat wheelchair and the idea that suddenly a first level character has this armored tank that lets them fly and mage hand and all the other things that the combat wheelchair did. But the next character can barely afford chainmail. They were overpowered and they were so reasonably priced that what would stop everybody from getting one? Sure, if you really want a combat wheelchair and you can justify that you have the 200 gold pieces or however much account to get a combat wheelchair at first level, then fine. But by your own logic, that means anybody else with that amount of money could go buy them too. So sure, you can have one, but that means anybody else I want in the game can also have one. I don't know about anybody else, but I still have this image of a orc motorcycle gang all riding combat wheelchairs into a village because they could afford it. You want a gun? Fine. All my bad guys get guns too. Well, that's not fair. Sure it is. You just explained to me why the technology exists for the combat wheelchair, so of course it's fair that all my bad guys could have one too if they wanted. We've got access to the same stuff you do, if not more so. In fact, I could write out the whole scenario of how they got their hands on the stuff by raiding this and doing that. Bloody, bloody, bloody. So that was the argument. The second half of the combat wheelchair argument, the second half of the advanced technology argument was mostly started by people who were disabled, was, well, if magic exists, why would you allow this to remain? You're okay with the cleric healing members of the party. You're okay with the cleric curing disease and poison, frick, you're okay with the cleric regenerating somebody else's lost arm or bringing the dead back to life, but you aren't okay with them repairing your legs or your arms or your spine or removing the disease that makes it so you can't walk. Because trust me, if magic existed, every disabled person I know would be lining up. Please, I want to be able to do all the same things that my normal friends can do, like go to the movies, walk downstairs, open a door by myself, not worry about passing out. Fuck. I would love if somebody could hand wave all my disabilities away. My eyes, my brain, my anemia, my anxiety, my dyslexia, my autism. Please make that go away. I'd love to be able to be up for an entire day and not having a migraine. Not be in chronic pain. Not constantly be worried that I'm going to freak out. So why is this an argument again? Where is this coming from? Because I thought we were done with the whole science fiction in D&D / combat wheelchair in D&D / the hypocrisy of D&D. Why can you have aliens, but I can't have my special thing that makes me uniquely special? Because it was never about disability awareness in the game or LGBTQ awareness in the game. Because those people were playing. It was always about this individual and then the other individuals who followed having a special ability, a special power, a special artifact, and then saying, only I can have it, and if you don't let me have it, I will ruin your game online. I will tell everybody that you're racist and you hate disabled people. That was the threat that was implied when people said, well, no, why would you want that if a first level cleric could just hand wave and you're fine? Well, you're discriminating against my disability. Well, first off, usually the people who wanted it weren't disabled. Second off, all the disabled people who were playing were like, I would love to not be in a wheelchair. Stop, weaponizing my disability for your false virtue signaling. Daleks and stairs, as Darkwinter says. So this argument has spiraled back because of the new Star Trek. Because there is a character in Star Trek who has a wheelchair, and there's a character who has allergies, and there's a character who has glasses, because we want to make Star Trek approachable to everyone now in 2026. The whole point of Star Trek was it was approachable to everyone. Gene Roddenberry said that in the beginning. It is established that you have the technology to literally tear somebody apart down to their basic atoms, fax them down to a planet, rebuild them from the base atom up to be an exact, perfect duplicate of the person you just sent down, including possessing all their memories and emotions. So they are that person. There's no question that the Captain Picard that left the transporter room and the Captain Picard that arrived on planet Delta 5 are not the same guy, because they are the same guy. You have that level of technology. You have the Borg's level of technology to recreate people. You have Genesis weaponry. You have pills that cure liver disease. Why would anybody in the Star Trek universe still have a wheelchair when it can literally hand wave and repair anything? I can make a human appear like a member of an alien race and have all the abilities of that alien race at the beginning of the show, and then at the end of the show, hand wave technology remove those so you're back to being normal. But your character has glasses, your character has allergies, and your character's still in a wheelchair because you want to appeal to the demographic. Except the demographic justifies that, no, the technology exists. People will then bring up Kirk. Well, Kirk had glasses. Kirk had glasses because William Shatner had glasses. And the technology was, the explanation was Kirk was allergic to the stuff. So he had to have the glasses, and he liked old things, which is why McCoy gave him the old glasses. It's not to say that there wasn't advanced technology available that could compensate for retinol so that Kirk could see normally. There was. Geordi. Oh, giant owl or giant bird. Some kind of bird of prey. It was always that it was Kirk's affectation. Kirk liked old things. Kirk couldn't use retinox. Kirk didn't want to use the other tech. He, for whatever reason, he could. We're assuming he had in the past because it would have been required by his job. He just liked old things, and McCoy went, okay, here's a pair of glasses as a gift that do the exact same thing as retinox and do the exact same thing as the advanced technology that people like Geordi has. You're Kirk, so we'll let you have the glasses because it's part of the story. And you're William Shatner. Not everybody else has that. And even if you had the same allergy, you aren't Kirk. You have access to technology 300 years more advanced than what Geordi and the Borg have. So you're choosing to have the allergy. Much less every time you're teleported, your body is rebuilt. So the genetic defect that makes you allergic to asparagus is gone. Because you're rebuilt. So the only reason allergy character still has allergies, the only reason why glasses character still has glasses, and the only reason the character in the wheelchair is in a wheelchair is forced virtue signaling and let's make this okay when we are also okay with the fact that technology exists to replace that. When something inevitably happens to allergy character, you think the fan base is going to go, oh, well, allergy character would never have wanted to use the holodeck or the healing bots or whatever to repair that damage. So please allow that actor to portray that character going forward, missing an arm or with a hole in their chest or, suffering from a debilitating disease because I want my disability represented in Star Trek. No, you would all be, there's no way they would allow that character to still have the weakness because they're on the United Federation of Planets spaceship. They are a member of the United Federation of Planets military. The military is not going to want you taking their money if you have a hole in your chest. But what about Pike? Yeah, Pike was a special thing. And when we see Pike, if we ever see Pike in the suit, it won't be the same suit that we saw when Pike was first introduced in Star Trek because the technology advanced. You can't justify Geordi and then say, oh, but they couldn't do that for Pike. You can't justify the Borg and not say, oh, well, they couldn't do that for Pike. So there's no reason for wheelchair, allergy, glasses people to be in Star Trek anymore. I know people are going to argue with me about, disability awareness, but this is Star Trek. You accept that the technology of Star Trek exists, and you have to accept that the United Federations of Planets would fix you. So you have to accept in D&D that magic exists, and if you accept in D&D magic exists, then you have to accept that the magic would fix you. Your family would drum up the 200 gold to get you fixed so you could have the same chances in D&D world that everybody else did. So there would be no reason for you to leave home at 16, Susan the wizard's apprentice, in a wheelchair, because the wizard would have, hand waved. You're fine. I'm a wizard. I don't want my apprentice slumping around with missing a head. Wham! You have a head. I don't want my kid not being able to do the job. I can't marry them off. 200 gold pieces, what? That's a year's work. I just buy the spell and heal them when they're 9. So I never have to worry about them being at 16 and not being able to produce, because that exists. And you don't think peasants in the Middle Ages would not have been lining up to get things better if they could? Would not have gone into debt if they could? Fuck. In the Middle Ages, your average king / baron would probably force people to be healed. at the cost of the king's own pocket, knowing that you're now in debt to the king because he fixed you. And now you are a contributing member of the king's society. You can pay taxes. Now add magic into that, and you don't think some evil despot would, because he thought it was in the best of his economy and the best of his people, hand wave that anybody in his kingdom is healed, whether they like it or not? And if that exists, then surely somebody is going to go, well, I can mass produce combat wheelchairs, 200 gold pieces a pop for one. Well, if I mass produce them, they become infinitely cheaper to produce. I have infinitely more resources to use until I run out of resources. Therefore, I can experiment more and come out with new and better versions, and I'm selling them, at pure profit. And then you have entire armies equipped with combat wheelchairs, because there's no reason why the king wouldn't if he had access to technology. So if you want to be special and have a gun or a wheelchair or whatever, fine. But then everybody else has the same access, which means you're not special, because yes, there's an entire army of orcs that are riding around terrorizing the countryside on combat wheelchairs. So, is science fiction okay in D&D? Yes it is. Are aliens okay in D&D? Yes they are. Can my character in your game, OGGM, have a combat wheelchair? Absolutely. But then so can all my bad guys, or the equivalent. So all my orcs are gonna have guns. All my skeletons are going to have vibro blades. Zombies are going to be riding around in combat wheelchairs because it makes them more effective. Evil kings are going to force cures on their populace, force technology on their populace, force mandatory control spells on the populace because they can, because you opened that door. So thanks. Or you could just accept that it's D&D. It's not real life. Etc. It's a freaking game about goblins with sticks, and none of that other real stuff matters and shouldn't matter, because it's supposed to be us having fun for 3 hours being superheroes. Anyways, and Dark Winter's going, my God, Robocop. Yeah, it would happen. They would totally, if the technology exists for one combat wheelchair and a king or wizard found out about it, he would mass produce it. Do you think when we invented guns and saw them and people were like, nah, it's not fair? It's just like TV when people are like, it'll never catch on. Unless, of course, somebody finds a way to make them cheap enough that everybody could have them. And then, hell yeah, they will catch on. Gunpowder? I can teach anybody how to pull a trigger. I don't have to specially train an archer. I don't have to specially train a guy in a suit of armor that takes years, when I can just hand this thing to anybody. They pull the trigger and either it's a success or a failure. Oh, well, of course. So, of course, Robocop would happen. Of course, a king or an emperor or an evil necromancer would find ways to monetize and stuff the technology. And that's about it for today. I've left you with that chilling prospect. Will you encounter skeletons with vibroblades in my game? I don't know. Till next time, I'm the OGGM. If you appreciate the nonsense that comes out of my mouth, let me know. If you are totally against aliens and science fiction in your D&D game, let me know. If you never want to hear me talk about these stupid topics ever again, let me know. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please support the OGGM through purchasing stuff on my drive-thru. Donate to the having a nice day.